Hello guys, I've done quite a few videos recently using EDHREC as a resource, and I think it's a great resource, although it kind of turns all decks into the same sort of pile of cards with some interesting synergies. And a card that pops up a lot that I am not a big fan of is Scute Swarm. I'm not sure it does enough on its own, but it leads to some interesting synergies. And in this video I'm going to look at some interesting interactions with token generators and Mystic Reflection, an instant I more or less never seen played. It's a 2-mana instant in blue that is very flexible. It can turn your crappy 1/1 tokens into an opponent's Elishnorn or an Elishnorn into 1/1 crappy creature of your own. So it works both ways. It's an adaptive card that I like a lot. I've been brewing around the 2 cards quite a bit, and I've not really come up with any legit deck, but I think I'm close. Here are some of the commanders I think you could build something stupid around Scute Boy and Reflections. The thought behind having these commanders is they don't have to break their own backs to make Scute Boy and Reflections work. And in this video I will not include the most obvious stuff like Avenger Zendikar, Dockside, Sunny T, Rampaging Baloth, Rex Sage, and etc. I'm gonna try to find some interesting picks that isn't super obvious. First out are some pure Simic commanders, because you need blue and green of course to play both Reflections and Scute Swarm. And first is Asuri or Esuri. And I think it fits nicely with Scute Swarm. It makes one huge Scute, and it scales with ETBs. Need a bit of evasion like Trample or Flying or whatever, but not a huge problem in Simic. Next up is Adrix and Nev. Just making more tokens is fairly self-explanatory. Ivy, Gleeful Spell Thief. I've got a Sultai deck that's running Ivy and Duplomancy. Vesuvan Duplomancy. It's a mutate deck with some enchantments as payoff, but you could easily build that into a combat trick, Simic, mutate sort of deal, making the Scute Swarm a monster by mutating some 5/5 or Gem Racer for example, making a 4/4 Trampler, and then if you do Mystic Reflections on the Scute Swarm that is mutated, you will get a stack of already mutated creatures. So I think that could be a super solid deck. Next up we move into Temur, and we have Xyris. Not fully dependent on Scute Swarm to make the Reflections shenanigans work, so that's super nice. So it's a spell slinger sort of deck that can do a lot of interesting stuff. So just Xyris on itself could actually run Mystic Reflections. And then we have Animar, of course. Could play Scute Swarm without a problem. A go wide strategy. 1 mana Scute Swarm is just fantastic. And it wants the reduction as well. So if you run Wood Elves and stuff, you can get some interesting synergies. I'm not going to include that, but having a land enter making 4 tokens, turn all tokens of those into Wood Elves would, generate a lot more Scute Swarms. And if you have haste, that could be lethal. And on top of it, Animar deck having 6 to 10 mana bombs at the high end of the curve will make Mystic Reflections a lot more solid of a card to have in the 99. So I think Animar would be a great fit for Mystic Reflections, Scute Swarm synergies. And Omnath, I'm not sure, it's a good Temur commander. It doesn't really care about Scute Swarm, but it has some interesting elementals and elemental synergies. To having Scute 5 or 6 or 8 Scute Swarms enter as a elemental lord would be sort of OTK sort of deal. So I think Omnath could use it because of the land drop and elemental synergies. So I think those 3 are my Temur commanders I would build around if I would go with Mystic Reflections. Next up are the Sultai commanders, and Volrath is pretty nutty. I did some research and it sort of breaks the whole thing, because if you can get any sort of counter on a Scute Swarm, you can activate Volrath to become a copy of the Scute Swarm and having the Scute Swarm text, and then play a land, and the trigger would be to turn a Volrath like a copy, because he loses legendary because he will be a copy of Scute Swarm, but a 7/5 Scute Swarm, it's pretty nutty. So that could be really strong, and Mystic Reflection would make all other Scute Swarms that would enter into, Volrath. It's nutty, it's really, really strong. And they don't get the -1 counter, but it's really strong. Yarok is simply value commander, likely runs Scute already, and can run Mystic Reflection. Isn't a huge ask for the deck, and it would generate pretty nice value for the deck. Simon and Dina, if Scute is already out, you can sack an insect token, or you can even sack a Scute Swarm token to generate more value, getting closer to that very explosive turn with a lot of tokens entering. And I think it's a solid card. Scute Swarm is a solid card for the deck, and Mystic Reflection isn't a huge ask for the deck either. And I only found one commander, it's Shanna, and life gain on ETB creatures, so when creatures ETB is highly synergistic for the deck, and having 4 or 5 Scute Swarms to enter as life gain creatures would generate a lot of value for the deck. But it's also the only banned commander I think would fit the description, or would be viable as a commander with synergy with Mystic Reflections and Scute Swarm. I will assume that you will have 3 ETB triggers or 3 Scute Swarms that reproduces when you drop your Mystic Reflections. And first we have Druid of Purification, that's simply just 3 destruction effects on a creature, more or less an artifact and enchantment sweeper. Then we have Blossoming Bog Beast, and if you give this guy haste, that's 12 life and 12 power and trample on all your creatures. And then we have Avenging Hunter, that's a little bit more juicy. It's a 5/4 trample instead of 1/1, and if you get 5 of those, you will get to go through a Undercity dungeon and then get the last effect, which is checking for a creature and putting it in play with counters and hexproof. And then we have Spike Weaver, and that would be 9 counters, so 9 1-mana fog effects, which is pretty brutal in a low power, mid power, creature focused meta. And then we have Avatar of Growth, and that's with haste, you basically get most, if not all, your lands onto the battlefield and infinite Scute tokens. So that's a value play. Primeval Herald is also like a value play. Get a bit more value than just your typical Wood Elf. Archdruid is pretty nice. You get 4/4s, 3 4/4s that taps for 9 mana and has elf synergies. Caller of the Claw, it's a bit more setup if you run like Ashnod's Altar or any of the sack outlets, or in response to a sweeper, but it's going to be pretty tricky. Or you just need to have it in play though, so that doesn't matter. But so a Gruul Claw could create a lot of value for you as well. And then we have the Pony, and it enters with haste and is an anthem effect, so that's super nice. And Honor Blade is, they see each other enter, so they would enter with 2 extra counters, trap for 3, they're 9 with human synergy and counter synergy. The Hydras, if they come in with haste, you get 12 power instead of 3. That doubles 3 times on attack, so that's almost 100 power trample if you get haste. So that's pretty dope. And the Paragon scales with warriors, enters with counters, has counter synergies, is a pretty strong, I'd say, for a budget build. Then we have Rejuvenator, a card that will run you a few extra lands, so you'll get more Scute Swarm value, and has counter synergies and ramp potential. Bellower is fetching 3 creatures, so this one could really, spiral out of control. And there's a 3-drop that I think would be fantastic if you run red on top, if you run like Teamer or whatever. And Tendrishir Dryad, it's not really budget, but it pushes out 69 power, I think. The first round, if you get to untap with it, you get 69 power, and that's pretty nice. The ooze is 12 power, and becoming 30 power on your end step with over six bodies. So, and has counter synergies and has a mana dump as well. So yeah, I think those are solid cards as well. Alright, so the last 4 will be Topir Stumper, it's just a better Wood Elves. Gala Greeters, that is a lot of value over time, so you get counters first, and then you get treasures, and then you get life. Or you pick your order, but they will trigger each of them, so you get 6 life on ETB, and then scale with more Scute Swamp triggers. Cemetery Prowler basically refunds you all the mana you spent on Mystic Reflections by exiling like creatures or whatever. If you're a Spellslinger deck, maybe Sorcerers or Instants, but exiling creatures will basically net you 3 discount on all your creature spells, on top of being Graveyard Hate. And God Eternal Ronus is just one turn kill, just one big attack, you double, then double, then double the power, and basically it's over. And this video became way too long, like much longer than I expected, so I will separate Teamer, Sultai and Band into different videos. I think Teamer or Sultai will have Band in it because I just found one. Other than that, I think, yeah, and Simic as well, of course, will be a separate video, but I will make those as well. Take care, guys.